Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day. I thank you for the opportunity to come to class and learn these truths. I ask now that you pour out your lettering upon us, grant us understanding and wisdom in this topic that we're about to discuss. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
The 70 as a waymark between the midnight cry and the Sunday law is based upon the midnight cry being the first day of the 5th month, and the Sunday law being the 10th day of the 7th month, which equates to 70 days. The idea that there were 12 primary disciples, 70 secondary disciples is another witness to this history. Moses' 70 elders gives you another witness to the 70. And in the story of Jacob, when his sons come to Joseph in Egypt twice, and then finally Jacob returns to Egypt with his sons, the number of people that came from Canaan to Egypt is 70. The number had been made up right here. So you have several witnesses to 70. But we also know that the 70 simultaneously has a different prophetic expression. It's also 3 months when you use inclusive reckoning. It's, what is that? August, September, October. So you got two things going here. So in this particular period of time, the midnight cry to the Sunday law, this particular symbol expresses itself two ways, right? 70 days, 3 months. Is everyone with me on that? So I don't know that every symbol does that. I doubt that every symbol expresses itself two ways. Every symbol may have more than one meaning, but by expressing itself two ways, I'm emphasizing that it portrays two different numerical values in the same period of time, 3 months or 70 days. You follow me?
Yeah.
So a symbol that it is a lion, it's not going to do that because it's not going to give you any numerical value. So this symbol with a numerical value does that. So I'm going to go through Esther here this morning without interaction, and then when I'm all said and done, we can have our interaction so I can control the flow until we have a point of reference. This being 9/11, this being the midnight cry, and this the Sunday law. In Esther 3:7, in the first month, that is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day and from month to month to the 12th month, that is the month of Adar. Now, that's verse 7. But let's go to verse 1. It says, after these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gates bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that he told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matter would stand. for he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then Haman was full of wrath. And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone. That being the key phrase there, in my mind, at least for one point. It's saying, if I'm understanding it right, he's so angry that he's decided, I'm not going to just deal with Mordecai. I'm going to deal with his whole race. Okay? He's going to deal with all the Jews. He's so angry. It's not just going to go punch Mordecai in the nose. He's going to commit genocide. And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him that the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even to Mordecai. So before you get to verse 7, what do you have? You have the motivation, or the purpose. Haman's already settled it in his mind that he's going to destroy the Jews. Okay? So when he's casting lots, he's not casting lots about destroying the Jews. That's already settled. He's casting lots looking for the day that he's going to destroy the Jews. Okay, and he begins on the first day of the first month, which is 9/11. And he does it day to day, month to month, at one level. This is telling us at 9/11, the judgment begins. Okay, so I agree with Tanya, what she was saying yesterday, and I agree with it strong enough to teach it. They're going from the first day of the first month, through the second month, and what are they looking for? They're not looking for the motivation to kill Mordecai and the people. That's already settled in the first 6 verses. They're looking for a date to do it on. Okay, so what was the date that they determined? The 13th day of the 12th month. So how did they figure that out?
It ended on the 13th.
When they got to the 13th day of the 12th month, the lots told them something, saying, this is the day. This is the day. So, if this is the case, then in verse 12 of chapter 3 it says, then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month. They're going to write the decree on the 13th day of the first month. But there's something that has preceded that. So if you go back to verse 8, right after it tells us in verse 7 that they begin casting lots from the first day of the first month for 12 months. And what they're looking for is a date by the context of the passage. There's nothing else that we can determine they were looking for. They weren't looking for the people to kill or who to kill. That was already settled. They're looking for the date. And so they determine the date. They get to the 13th day of the 12th month. They've got the date set. And from there to the 13th day of the first month, they're going to go in and talk to the king about getting this decree put in place. So it says in verse 8, and Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, okay, and then he tells him about these Jews that don't keep the king's law. And then verse 9, to please the king, let me destroy them. Verse 10, the king puts his seal, gives Haman his ring, which is his seal. And in verse 11, he says that he'll pay for it. So, when you get to here, the 13th day of the first month, you have from the 13th day of the 12th month, when they finally, through the revelation of the lots, however it worked, came to understand this was the day. From here to here, you have 1 month that Haman is interacting with Ahasuerus about getting the decree done. It may have been, he may have settled it with him on the 14th. It may have just took a 30-minute interview. But it's not until the 13th day of the first month that the scribes are called to put it into writing. We can't really know how long this dialogue between Haman and the king took. Okay, so what this does is it answers one of the dilemmas of yesterday, and that is this. And it's in this same history where this phenomenon is marked. Okay, this phenomenon meaning that the 70 days produces 70 days, but it also produces 3 months. Okay, so if you see that, then when you get here, this is the 13th day of the first month, the midnight Kai. When you get there, at one level, it would be 11 months and 13 days. It would be, whatever that would be, 343 days till they find the date on the 13th day of the 12th month. But that would be, if you use inclusive reckoning, it would be 12 months. Right? And then if you go from the 13th day of the 12th month to the 13th day of the first month, 1 month, 30 days. Okay, so at least part of what I was hearing about Brittany yesterday is she didn't like the loose ends of the 43 days and that, and using this inclusive reckoning gives you a cleaner breakdown, 12 and 1. But this would also be what? What did we say? 11, 330 and
11
13,
months and
343 days. 343 days. And then this would be 30 days. So what you have to settle in your mind is whether you can justify actually identifying the 13th day of the 12th month as the place that they came to understand this is the day they want to write into the decree. And the decree that we're talking about at the end of the world that has the seal to it is a decree that emphasizes a day. It's the Sunday versus the 7th day. So it's the decree, and one of the characteristics of the decree is a specific day. It's a test over the 7th day or the 1st day. So we're saying these decrees here, this decree of Haman here, I'm saying that this is the 3rd decree. How are we doing that? Let me put those up there first. The 1st decree is the call and divorce. Cause to effect. The 2nd decree is the gathering. And the 3rd decree is Haman's decree. But one of the things that we have always taught about the Sunday law is that it's progressive. We understand here that from Ezra 7:9 and the connected truth, that when Ezra leaves Babylon on the 1st day of the 1st month, he's got that 3rd decree with him, so we can put Haman's decree here. But it isn't going to go in effect until over here. And once we understand the 3rd decree is the Sunday law, then we know that the Sunday law, it progresses through history. Every country on the globe is going to follow the example of the United States. Ultimately, there's going to be a universal Sunday law. So there is a sense that the 3rd decree, it covers all of this period of time. So it's valid to put Haman's decree here, but it is put into writing here. And the writing is the beginning of the image of the beast test. There will be a decree here. And this decree is what we're learning about 2 Chronicles 30. And I'm guessing at verse 5. Someone want to check that?
I'll check it.
It is verse 5, okay. Okay, this is the decree to come to the second Passover. Alright, so what that does is this writing on the 13th day of the first month and the decree to come to second Passover gives us two witnesses to a decree here at the midnight cry. In this history, what am I forgetting here about our discussion yesterday? In this history, you have to do with fractals. That's the other part I want to put in place for so you'll know this, how to do this that you need to do this on your final test next week. There is a fractal that has to be dealt with in the story of Esther. And it's the 180 days. Okay, we know that Ahasuerus had a feast for 180 days. And then he had a second feast for 7 days while Esther was having a second feast for 7 days. She got the doubling of the two feasts there, the 2 7-day feasts. So we also know that there's a 12-month period for purification before the virgins go into the king, for him to decide whether they're going to be the new queen or a concubine. So after Esther's 12 months, she comes into the king and she's married here. And the marriage is certainly got lots of witnesses to the Sunday law. October 22nd, 1844, Christ went into the marriage, typifying the perfect fulfillment of that. But we know that there is also a marriage here. What's the marriage here? What's the marriage?
Marriage of Canaan.
Marriage of Cana. We can mark the marriage of Cana right here. So there's a marriage here and a marriage here. Therefore, we see a fractal of 12 months from here to here. Right? And at this sense, Esther here is the 100 I'm going to put first fruits rather than the 144,000, and then you don't have to deal with where the 144,000 are actually manifested when Christ stands up. From here to here, the first fruits are developed. They come into the marriage. But Esther being a priest is illustrated from here to here. Right, okay, so when in this history here, the women were given 2 periods of purification. The first was 6 months with myrrh, and the second was 6 months with sweet smelling odors. So 6 months is how many? 180 days. So you've got that here, and you've got 6 months here. But this 6 months of her purification covers this history when she is illustrating the first fruits, 2 purification processes. Okay, and where do we have a justification for 2 purification process?
Who took the plan?
2 Chronicles 29, what, 8?
Oh, where the
With the
priests
2 8s.
Yeah.
Oh, the court and the court in the house. I can't see it just like
2 Chronicles 29.
Oh, 17.
17? What's it say?
As They began on the first day of the first month to sanctify, and on the 8th day of the month they came to the porch of the Lord. So they sanctified the house of the Lord in 8 days, and in the 16th day of the first month they made an end.
So this 6 months is 8 days. This 6 months is 8 days. And what is this then? This is the temple. And this is the court. Where did Ahasuerus have his second feast?
Court of the
In
garden.
the court in the garden. Okay, so some of these things are tying together. But you also would have 2 6-month periods in here. You have to deal with these fractals. So where are the gathering, the 2 gatherings of the virgins?
The midnight cry, the sun
He's putting them at the end.
Between
11 and the midnight.
Where are they called?
9/11.
9/11 and the midnight cry. But the gathering must be a process because you're stuck with that dilemma. It says plainly there's 2 gatherings. They're called here. But the priests are gathered here. And the priests are used to call the Levites. And the Levites are gathered here. And the 144,000 are used to call the 11th hour workers. Okay, so when Esther is representing the Levites, does she represent the Levites? Oh, I'm saying Esther represents 3 things, minimum 3 things. She represents the first fruits. That means the priest and the Levites together corporately. But she represents the priests who came at 9/11 and are married at the midnight cry after 12 months. Okay, but she also represents the Levites. Let's put priests up here. Priest is there, let's put Levite here. How does she represent the Levites?
She hasn't been called this 30 days.
Okay, she's, when Mordecai is standing at the gate telling her about what?
The death decree that Haman had written.
Telling her about this decree that was written on the 13th day of the first month. He's telling her about the decree of the midnight cry. She says, I haven't been called for these 30 days.
Would that 30 days be the same 30 days right before the
Up here?
midnight cry? Yeah.
It could be. It could be.
Because then she gets called in, and that's where the midnight cry begins, correct?
Yeah, but she says, pray and fast with me for 3 days.
Yeah.
So this 3 days that they're praying and fasting is this three-step testing process that culminates at the Sunday law when she goes into the king again. So if the tricky part here is at least our argument, maybe our argument's not valid. We have been saying that when she says, I haven't been called, that the calling is based upon Revelation 17 verse 14. Called, chosen, and faithful. Okay? So if we're going to hold that the calling typifies that 3-step testing process, and you're going to make this 30 days the 30 days, then you have to, not you have to, but you are identifying a 3-step testing process in that history. Because if I haven't been called for these 30 days, if our logic holds, she's called at the beginning, she's chosen in the middle, and she's faithful here. You see that one? So I don't know how to deal with that one at this time. Could be. But that means that we got an even smaller fractal in there. That's going to cause some grief for some people. Not yet. Let me finish these thoughts. 1280, 33, and we haven't got to Mordecai and Esther's decree of Purim. Okay. What's your question or comment, Sister Tanya?
The number 12, or the 12 months, but also the 12 disciples, I recognize that basically there's an 11 and then a 1 that makes it a 12. So you kind of see that the 1 has to go through a 3-stepping process in order to be gathered to the 11th.
But are we seeing 13 in here?
No, 11 and a 1.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
because of the 12
and inclusively, it would be 12. But you could
But the 12,
exclusively make it 11 and 2. No, exclusively 11 and 1. I guess if you're going to cut off the 13 days of the first
Right.
month.
because then you had the 11 disciples with 1, then you had the 11 brothers with Joseph with 1,
Okay,
there's
so
the 12.
what we're doing here, we're not using inclusive reckoning. We're saying from the first day of the first month to that he discovers the date on the 13th day of the 12th month. So we're going to use exclusive reckoning and say that's just 11 months. Okay, and being 11 months, this is a nice touch. Then from the 13th day of the 12th month to the 13th day of the first month, when the decree is written, using exclusive reckoning, it is 1 month. So what you have there, this 1 month here in this line, 11 and 1, is showing where Judas falls. Where the falling away first that precedes this. This is where Judas goes out and hangs himself when he falls in this period of time. Taking one of the 12 disciples out of the picture, the 11 and 1 breakdown. But we also have a 12, 1, 343, 30. But you do have, with the 12 disciples in this history, you do have the 11, 1 already established there.
You actually have four testimonies to do the 11-1. You've got Joseph and the 11 brothers. You got 11 disciples plus the 1. You've got the 11 tribes in Judges that go against Benjamin, and they finally unite. And then you've got Judah that makes David king, and then finally the other tribes join in. So you've got 4 testimonies to show the 11 plus 1, which equals 12.
There's something interesting about it being 13 inclusively though, because in the book of Esther we see, especially with Haman, there's all these 13s. It's in the 13th year, and it's 13 months, and it's the 13th day. So there's something about that, and it's commonly understood that the number 13 is. Now I don't know if it's just a worldly thing, but the number 13 is associated with the devil. So this is showing a wicked, process of something that's happening. I'm not really sure how to identify it, but
Right.
Not God, no, that's for sure.
yeah, it's one off.
Okay, so
I have 2 questions. What was the 1280, 30, and 3 that you mentioned?
1280.
Yeah, like right at the end of when you were done, you said 1280, 30, and 3, but you didn't say what that was.
Today I said this?
Yeah.
You were adding.
You were thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was adding this up. 30 times 11 is 330, plus 13 days is 343.
So what's the 1280?
And maybe it was just a slip of the tongue. I don't think you meant
No,
1280.
I don't know what it was. Is it on the board?
I don't know. I was trying to find it.
You
So
did say it. You said it.
You did say
I
that.
ended
I just
up-
thought maybe you just.
I
slipped
ended up
up.
those 3 numbers that you said 1280, 30, and 3, and they were 1313, and I didn't know if you were thinking something out there, but I thought that was
Okay, so I was thinking something. That's all I know.
Okay, and then my second question was, why again do we mark Haman's decree at 9/11 and not at the midnight cry?
You mark it everywhere. What does Ezra 7:9 teach you?
That Ezra had the 3 decrees.
He had the third decree in his hand when he came out on the first day of the first month. And we read from Great Controversy when she's it's a Great Controversy or Prophets and Kings. Anyway, we read the quote where it says all 3 of the decrees were required to bring the prophecy to the perfection needed or something like that. So this being the history of the third decree, Ezra 7:9, it brings with it the other 2 decrees. It required all 3. That's why she says there can't be a third without a first and a second. So the fact that he has the third decree in his hand means that some way, somehow, the third decree is marked here, because this is when he's leaving Babylon. Now, if you get into the story of Esther, the proof for that is when it's written here into a law, it's sealed with the king's seal. So this decree that is in Haman's heart here, it's the decree that's associated with the seal. And the seal is the Sunday law decree. So
It's marking the very first point you can see the third in our history, and it includes the rest. It's just like why we mark the Day of the Lord at the Sunday law, because the Day of the Lord is seen all over the place after that, but not before. So you're marking the very first point that you can mark it, just to cover the whole history.
and then you have at least 5 places where Sister White says that our work at the end of the world is to combine the messages. So we're combining all 3 of them right here. Where the thing to hear that seems significant to me in terms of what is already understood about the image of the beast test is the writing takes place here. This tells us that there's going to be a decree at the midnight cry. That's significant, but that's not the point I'm getting. The writing here, this is telling us more specifically that what's going to mark the beginning of the image of the beast testing time and the midnight cry time period is the decree that is written. We've been thinking, it's about something maybe about marriage, and maybe it is, but it's the first step towards the Sunday law, because there is an escalation of Sunday legislation that leads to this. This is this beginning, because this is Haman's decree that has the seal on it. So this may have some kind of legislation to do with marriage, because that makes sense, marriage and the Sabbath, the 2 institutions being restored. Maybe it's going to be we're going to shut down all business on Sundays so we can restore the family. That's what the Pope's been saying for years. This is his argument. The family needs more family time. So, maybe we come across, in order to restore the marriage relationship, we're going to close, I don't know. But this decree has an element. This is the beginning of the Sunday laws that lead to the Sunday law here.
So,
I wonder too, because we know at the beginning of that 1 month period, that's when the 6th trumpet sounds and the second woe comes back into history. And I was wondering, we've raised this question before, but the writing of the decree that happens at Haman's time, like yours in the context of what you're saying.
Okay, now you're moving it to a different level. Is everyone pardon me? Is everyone settled in kind of to this stuff?
If you could just, since I was late to class, just quick give me the 70 titles. I don't.
No, I'm just showing here that
No, I just want to know the reference.
I'm giving it to you. I'm showing here that in this period of time you got the 70, because it's from the first day of the 5th month to the 10th day of the 7th month, and then you have the 70 disciples of Christ. You have the 70 disciples of Moses. You have the number of 70 made up when Jacob comes back into Egypt, and you have 7,000 that haven't bowed a knee to Baal in the story of Elijah. You've got these the 70s. You've got, there was a 7 over here. This 7 days.
Yeah.
Okay. But what my point was is that we use inclusive reckoning to get the 70. 30 days, 30 days, 10 days. But simultaneously, we use exclusive reckoning on the same symbol because we also call it 3 months.
Other way around. But yeah.
That's right.
Okay. All right, other way around on the inclusive and exclusive. So all I'm saying is that in this history, the fact that these numerical symbols can produce two things based upon inclusive and exclusive, that this particular number 70 has established that it's okay for us to come over here and see more than one thing in Ezra 3:7 to 3:12.
Okay, thank you.
Right? This symbol does it, so this symbol can do it too. Now Michael is wanting to add a line, which is okay, but I'm going to do it down here so it doesn't get so complex. Maybe. This is the midnight cry again. This is 9/11. This is 1989. In Revelation 9, in the first woe, the fifth trumpet in Revelation 9, there's a key that's turned that opens the bottomless pit and allows Islam to come into history. And that key is a battle. And what battle is that?
It's the Battle of Nineveh.
It's the Battle of Nineveh.
Yeah.
In Revelation 9, it's Carchemish. I think that's an A in the middle. But and what else is it? It's Daniel 11:40. Okay, it's the long drawn out war between the king of the south and the king of the north. Is the key that brings Islam into history.
What do you know about the war between the Persians and the Greeks between the time Vashti was taken out as queen and the time the call of the virgins? There was a battle where he lost his whole army with the Greeks.
Huh.
I don't know.
There's a war
So you're saying that might be this battle?
Like the long drawn out war?
I don't know.
So
You're saying that
how
might
long before the Greeks take over then? Because this is what? This isn't the last king, is it?
No, you have Artabanus and then Artaxerxes.
And after Artaxerxes, how many are there? Aren't there?
I don't know.
There's a bunch, I think.
Right. Okay, so what Michael is saying is this is the beginning of the fifth trumpet in Revelation 9. Making a distinction between trumpets and woes. But there comes a point in Revelation 9 in the fifth trumpet where the woe is going to begin. And how long is the woe going to go?
150 years.
5 months.
5 months.
Which is, of course, how long Elizabeth was in hiding.
5 months.
Okay, which up here, from Elizabeth and Mary meeting each other and Mary being incarnated, is that the right way? Was Christ incarnated?
At the midnight cry.
Incarnation.
Well, what
In the
happened to
6
Mary?
months.
What, impregnated?
Yeah, impregnated. Yeah.
Conceived.
Yeah, anyway, there's 3 months. Okay, this 3 months here that we're dealing with is confirmed by from here to here, from their meeting until the birth of John is 3 months. We have this 3 months in the record. But here we have 5 months which is 150 years of this is the first woe. And at the end of the first woe, which is July 27th, 1299. No, 1449. 1449?
Yep.
Back here, this is July 27th, 1299. 150 years later brings you to here. This is the beginning of the sixth trumpet.
And that fifth trumpet goes all the way to 727, 1449.
And the fifth trumpet goes all to 727, 1449.
It
Yeah.
continues sounding even though the woe joins it later.
Yeah.
That's just from me.
No, the woe, this is the arrival of the second woe too.
Okay, yeah, I understand the first woe doesn't join in until 727, 1299.
The fifth trumpet lasts longer than the first woe, but the sixth trumpet
And then start.
lasts longer than the second woe in a reverse.
Okay, so
I'll tell you, yeah. It's a reverse.
the second woe ends on August 11th, 1840. The second woe going from here to here. But the sixth trumpet ends
1844.
October 22nd, 1844. So you have
Seventh trumpet.
4 years,
Sounding.
4 years here. Yeah. And you have 4 years here, from 1449 to 1453. Okay. So from 1449 to 1453, the first 4 years of the second woe, you have a period of time, did it again, quick learner. This 4 years corresponds to what?
The 1 month.
1 more.
The 1 month up here, or the 30 days. This, if you're looking at the story of Pergamus and you're looking at it carefully, what the story of Judas in connection with the story of Pergamus tells you, and what the parable of the wheat and tares tell you, is that the tares are bound together first, and then the wheat. The wheat are bound together at the midnight cry, technically, or prophetically, and Judas is bound together just before the cross. Okay, so there's this period of time is speaking about the falling away first, to when the man of sin is going to be revealed at the cross. Barabbas is revealed in contrast with Christ. So you got that story going on here. But here you have 4 years, and what are the 4 years? What are those 4 years? What prophetically in Revelation 9? Because this is what Michael wants to talk about. Michael gets to tell us now. What are those 4 years?
I'm not 100% sure what your question is. What
Okay, well, what takes place in those 4 years?
No, the woe had begun at the beginning of those 4 years.
Oh, that's pretty big. Okay.
That's not where I was going to, and I'm not really sure. What do you?
Okay, at the beginning of this 4 years, you have the last emperor of Eastern Rome surrendering his national sovereignty to 4 powers. And in the middle of this 4-year period, you have these 4 powerful sultans have been pretty much consolidated into one powerful sultan, and his name is Muhammad II. And in the middle of this 4-year period, in 1451, Muhammad II determines that he wants to take Constantinople, then called something different back in that history. He wants to take that from the Greeks and make it his capital. So he begins, I don't know if he wants to make it his capital, I threw that in, but he wants to take Constantinople.
Yes.
And so he begins the warfare, and by 1453, what happens in 1453?
The walls come down.
The walls come down. So you have a wall marked here. The walls of Constantinople come down here, which this is the two walls of Balaam as a second witness to the walls. And in the two institutions, marriage and the Sabbath that were created in Eden. The Sabbath is a symbol of the law, and the law is our wall of protection. Sister White says so. You get lots of quotes of that.
Sunday law, Sabbath, the law, SL.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But marriage
Marriage to
is
I don't know what
the law of protection to humanity.
marriage to Christ.
Okay, so because it is a law, you can do this. I can prove it from the Spirit of Prophecy now. I have the quotes. Because marriage is a law is a wall. There is a wall here in the marriage relationship, this institution being restored at the end of the world. There's a wall here. And so we got a wall here with marriage in the image of the beast testing time. The image of the beast is the breaking down of the marriage wall. But Sister White says at the end of time, every divine institution is going to be restored. Marriage is going to be restored. That wall is going to be defended. And that is got a second witness to Balaam's two walls, where the ass crashes the United States into a wall and cripples him. But this wall comes down here to the wall of Constantinople. Okay, so you got at least three walls.
Yeah. So my question was, it was a while ago, so I'm trying to think of it fully again. But you were saying that we were talking about Haman's decree at the midnight cry, and I lost my question. It's recorded.
Isn't 1449, isn't that supposed to be August 11th, not 7/27?
No, it starts in 727 when you... Right here, what is the prophecy right here that starts here?
390.
A year, a day, a month, and an hour. And when you take all of those expressions,
Leads you to
it comes
August
to
11th.
391 years and 15 days, which brings you to August 11th, 1840.
It's interesting that Haman's degree deals with the year, with the month, and with the day.
Year, month, day.
But we don't have the hour.
It's about 30 days.
It's interesting, but anyway,
Brittany had a question.
did she?
Oh, yeah. Where does the sixth trumpet end?
The sixth
October
trumpet,
22nd?
the sixth trumpet ends on October 22nd, 1844. No,
Yes.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
second woe ends on August 11th, 1840. So if you were going to do that, you would go sixth trumpet. Anyway, that's what it does.
Oh, I remember my question. Haman's degree, I was wondering if it has to deal with... Sister White says that the people want to return to national prosperity because they've already... That means the economy had crashed, right? If you want to return to national prosperity, the economy has to have crashed. So I was wondering if then that point at 1449, July 27, 1449, when the second woe comes, that's when we would see the economy crashing due to the results of Islam. And at the midnight cry, that's when you see legislation starting to come back starting to push us back towards a conservative mentality, towards Sunday sacredness.
Why?
And towards
Why are you doing that?
holy marriage.
Why are you putting it there? What's justification? Just because it sounds good?
The
No.
scribes write it. Midnight cry.
What are you talking about? Putting what where?
You're putting it back here. Why?
Putting what there? I'm not putting
The economic collapse.
yeah, because the decree comes as a result to want to turn to national prosperity. That's what I was asking.
The decree is already in the heart of Haman back over here.
Yes, but he needs to word it some way. He's not just coming out and saying I want to kill God's people. In our history, he's not. in our history, he's doing something a little bit more sneaky, maybe through marriage in relation to the Sunday, and to get to God's people eventually.
Oh, wow.
I just wasn't sure because we see the walls coming down in 1453, and so that's where I've marked the strike, but the woe comes prior.
The woe begins prior.
Well, yeah, it begins at 1449.
Yeah. But here's where Balaam's foot is crushed.
Where the crippling, yeah, okay.
That's what I'm saying. What justification do you have the crippling? And that's what you're saying. The crippling is what produces the motivation for the decree. If you have a reason to get his foot crushed back here.
I see. That was my question. I'm just trying to understand the woe, what actually happens when the woe comes into history, or does anything actually happen that's noticeable? I'm not really, I don't grasp, I guess, that. So I was seeing if Haman's decree helps to bring light on that subject. The strike and the passing of legislation, which order they come in.
Fair enough.
Maybe you said he already had it decided before they even cast the lots and all that.
Yeah.
They were just finding the day.
Yeah, he already knew what he was going to do back here.
Back there, yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking too, because you had said something about the marriage. It'd be like
Okay, we don't know that one, Michael.
When is it going to be implemented?
Drop it.
What's going to happen to implement it?
This is here. Zechariah. Is it Zacharias?
Zacharias.
And what can't he do? Speak. Why?
Struck down.
Because he struck dumb. Why?
Because
Because he didn't.
He rejected the prophetic message. But sure enough, his wife gets pregnant. And she's in hiding for 5 months. Then in her 6th month, Mary and Elizabeth come together and they prophesy. A double prophecy. A double. And then Zacharias' son's name is kind of changed because they wanted to name him Zechariah. They name him John. So there's a name change here. And here Zechariah speaks. What am I forgetting in here? This is 3 months. Which would mean out here somewhere, 6 months, Jesus is born. And of course, we haven't fully settled this, but when Jesus and Moses were born, there was a bloodbath. But there's some wiggle on it. So, in this history here, what's going on? 1 month.
1 month.
Elizabeth is no longer in hiding.
She reveals herself.
We don't know much about what she's doing there.
It just says that the next thing that we hear is Gabriel visits Mary.
Where you wonder what they're doing in all those periods. So you can see that there's that little period right before you get to the midnight cry. There's something
Yeah,
significant that must
every time
happen.
it's always kind of like.
Yeah, and it's a small space right before it all.
No, I
happens.
think it's pretty well defined. We just haven't taken
I'm
the time
saying
to wrap our mind around it.
For us, it'll be something that marks that time period.
Okay, I can tell you what the characteristics are. It's probably not that hard. And here's what it is. At the beginning of the 6th trumpet to the end of the 6th trumpet, you have a 4-year period at the beginning and a 4-year period at the end. So you take the characteristics of the 4-year period at the end and combine them with the 4-year period at the beginning, and that's what's going on in here.
In that small space?
Yeah, that's what
So
Jesus illustrates
what
it.
was going on?
Here, this is a manifestation of the power of God. This is where the everlasting gospel is accomplished from 1840 to 44. It's almost scary to consider this one because we know that in that history there was 2 temple cleansings. So if you're going to put 1840 to 1844 in here, and you have to,
There's another one.
then you've got 2 small fractals in there of 2 temple cleansings of the Protestants and the Millerites.
But things will be happening.
But in this
rapidly.
history, you also have the three-step testing process, or the everlasting gospel, because in 1449 you have the surrendering of the national sovereignty, and there at the middle you have Muhammad II making his decision to go after Constantinople, and at the end you have the walls coming down, and the walls coming down is an easy one to line up with the Sunday law, because the wall of separation of church and state is there at the Sunday law. So with the closed door for 1453 and a beginning point in 1449, it is not a stretch to see 1451 as the second step of 3 steps. So you have a 3-step testing process in here. And at the beginning, you have a country that's surrendering its national sovereignty to some other power. And that power is represented with the number 4. It's great. The 4 sultans. And the number 4 is down here because at the beginning of this history, on August 11th, 1840, you have a power, the Ottoman Empire now, surrendering its national sovereignty to the 4 European powers.
That's when the 10 kings will take over at that point in
No,
time.
it isn't. This 6th kingdom has to fall first before
Yeah, why
6th
don't you have
kingdom
30
falls
days
here.
Before.
Pardon me?
How come you don't have another 30 days before the Sunday law? then?
How come you don't have another
Like
30?
you got the 4 years down here.
Yeah, you do.
Mhm, that's
You
what-
do.
that's what I'm saying.
You're
That's-
definitely going to have this same characteristics that lead up to the Sunday law.
Right.
So in this history, you have 2 witnesses of the sovereignty of a kingdom being surrendered. First, Eastern Rome, then the Ottomans. 2 witnesses that right here, the sovereignty, most likely of the United States, is being surrendered into the hands of a power that's represented by 4. And in this history,
Worldwide.
you have probably, this is the sealing, the binding off of the priest. Okay.
Earlier you said call chosen faithful, we'd have to be able to show that little fractal right there in the 30 days. Well, you just showed that.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that was
Do you
a side note.
remember what he said?
So what? What did he say?
He said that earlier when we were talking about Esther's 30 days, I have not been called during this 30 days. Pray for me for these 3 days. That if we're going to place this call here in this 30 days, then she's called, chosen, and faithful. And you would have that in 1449, 1451, and 1453, 1840, 1842, 1844, and 1844.
43, 1844.
Yeah, you would have that.
You know the number 70, at least I know 2 accounts where you would have 68 plus 2 equals 7. In the history of Moses, you had 68 elders with him, but 2 of them were in the camp. With the history of Joseph, when they're counted the 70, they inclusive the 2 sons of Joseph. So you have 68 plus 2, that equals 70.
She's trying to make this little period down here. If you're wondering what she's doing. And I didn't intend to go this far. But anyway, I'm telling you, this history is discernible now. There's too many witnesses not to see it. You have, at the beginning, you have a country's sovereignty being handed off to 4 powers. And what we have taught, and I think this may be me, it's what I've understood, I've taught it, I know I've taught it a lot this way when I express it, is the last emperor of Rome surrendered his national sovereignty to 4 powers without a shot being fired, and the weak man of the East, the last Ottoman Sultan, surrendered his national sovereignty to 4 European powers without a shot being fired. In both those cases, there was, there may have been warfare swirling around, but the relationship between the last emperor of Rome and the 4 sultans, and the last sultan and the 4 European powers. There wasn't any shooting going on between them, and national sovereignty was surrendered. So here, there's a surrendering of the national sovereignty, I think.
And also in this key of Daniel 11, the war of the USSR was a Cold War. There wasn't really shots being fired. It wasn't the typical kind of warfare that we were dealing with, which
Right.
is the Third World War, and we're going into the Fourth World War.
So here you would have some kind of national sovereignty being surrendered at the beginning of a 3-step testing process called Chosen and Faithful on 2 witnesses. You can see the 3 steps in both of these histories. But when you get to the end, the thing that we're dealing with here is the wall of Constantinople is taken down. And that's this wall of the marriage relationship. And it's the wall that Balaam crashes his foot into. What?
Oh, I was gonna say it protects humanity.
Yeah, it's the...
So,
When you understand it this way, when Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment? This is the first 4 commandments. This is the second 6. The 6 commandments here is what is dealing with our relationship between each other. This is our relationship with God. And upon these 2 walls hang all the commandments.
Yeah. And at the midnight cry, because there's going to be little Sunday laws that happen leading up to the big one, the wall of the Constitution, the wall of God is, while the principles are being repudiated of the Constitution, the wall of God is being torn down from the midnight cry of the Sunday law. So you have the wall of marriage marked there, but you can also see the wall of God's law. You see what I'm saying?
No.
Well, from the midnight cry forward, there's going to be little Sunday laws, state Sunday laws,
Yeah.
right? And each one of those,
Even federal.
each one of those, as they're passed, is going to be a violation of the law of God, and there's going to be judgments corresponding to the darkness that state goes into. So each one of those is a breaking down of the wall until you get to the point where the wall is torn
progressive.
down. So you can see the wall, in the sense of the Sunday law, even without the marriage, and then the marriage is another witness on top of that.
so, can you say that
There's
that
2 walls.
1 month period right before the midnight cry is the last warning message God is giving the people from 9/11 to make sure that they are ready to enter into that midnight cry experience?
Yeah.
And it'll be a visual somewhat, if you're watching. You'll know that you're that close. It's a period of time where you're gonna have to, you'll recognize where you're at for those that are watching.
What we recognize. You're
That
talking about the midnight cry or here?
I'm talking about in that period of time right before the midnight cry, that 1
Yeah,
month,
okay.
that
What are you saying?
it's just gonna be a visual for the people in 9/11 that are,
Nope,
not completely
I don't think so.
right there.
If
because
you're going
the
to deal,
midnight cry
if you're
is
going to deal with and this is technical, but I know that it's accurate. And if you haven't settled into it, you may not understand this. But in this history here, there's a 3-step testing process. But the 3rd test for this history is right here. This is where Judas closes his probation.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just before here. Okay, there's a falling away first. Okay, there's a distinction made between the wise and the foolish here, and the wise here at this point in advance of the midnight cry, because this would be the crisis where it's demonstrated for everyone to see what character the priests have
And so that
formed
would be
from
the same
9/11.
going to the Sunday law. That's
Yeah,
the-
and this is repeated. This is the 3 days of Esther's going into the king, but it's probably ends here. This is the binding off time
Yeah,
period of
okay.
the 2 classes. And the visual here in this history is false doctrine. False doctrine that was introduced in this movement is testing everyone that's profess anything in this movement, to see if they're going to do their due diligence to understand the Word of God and become familiar with the Word of God on their own. If they don't do that, they won't see this. But what Michael is saying, what Michael is trying to say, and if you didn't catch it, it's worth catching, is he's trying to argue that there's a wall here and a wall here. And in so doing, this answers Balaam's two walls. Because Balaam's brought into two walls and he crashes into one, and Michael is saying this is the wall he crashes into where he is crippled, but he gets led into this history, these two walls. And if Michael can show that the beginning of this 4-year period and this 4-year period, that there's a wall there, then he will have nailed down Balaam's two walls. And then what we would have is we would have probably some kind of ruling by this in the Supreme Court or some kind of law in the Congress that would provide the legal justification for a decree that marks this history. Because, there's already legal rulings back 150 years of people that talk about Sabbath and Sundays. They have already put certain arguments in place. But can we find a wall here? Because if you did, you'd have Balaam's two walls. That's what Michael's trying to say. You had a question? Comment?
Well, you were talking about wall, and I was wondering the verse in Esther 9:19. It says, therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled town made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting and a good day of descending portions one to another. Just want to know that unwalled wall that they lived in, does that have any significance what we're talking right now?
I don't know, but it's probably the Levites.
And wall backward is law.
Okay.
Is what?
Law.
Okay, now, do you remember, there's another little nuance about where does the book of Esther take place? Shushan the palace. How many places do we find that in the scriptures?
3 books.
3 books. And what is the story of Nehemiah?
Rebuilding the streets and the walls.
Rebuilding the streets and the walls. So there's,
The street.
what we're doing in this study is we're building walls. Okay? We're doing Nehemiah's work.
And streets.
Here's
Yeah, and streets. But right now we're dealing with, pardon me?
And Sabbath reform.
Yes. Yes.
Sabbath
This
reform
is the
Sabbath and marriage reform.
Yeah, this is the reform movement that all the reform movements pointed forward to. So we're doing every kind of reform that's marked. But Nehemiah, he came to rebuild the streets and the walls in troublous times. And when did he conclude his work?
52 days.
In 52 days. Okay.
49 plus 3.
49 plus 3. Everyone remember this?
Yeah, I walked around the first 3 days.
What does this 49th day get you to?
50th day.
The 50th day, which is the Sunday law. Okay, so what is the first time prophecy of the 2300 years?
The 49 years. 7 weeks.
Isaiah 7?
It's
7 weeks.
Oh, no, sorry.
Isaiah 7, and it takes you to
Is that 457?
408?
408.
408. It took 49 years for the streets and walls to be built in troublous times. But when did the 2300-year prophecy begin?
And the fall of 450.
On the third decree.
On the third degree.
Okay, so
What's 408 real quick?
that's the end of 49 years. Beginning of 457 BC,
The weeks?
it says, yeah.
Okay.
The- Go to Daniel 9:25.
And then the money.
Go to Daniel 9:25. What's it say?
Now therefore understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem.
When's that?
457.
What decree is that?
The third decree.
Okay, so there's 3 decrees that preceded.
And in the side of the print shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous time.
Okay, so it broke this 70 weeks down to 62 weeks and 7 weeks, and the 7 weeks is identifying when the streets and the walls were going to be built. So when Nehemiah came to do this work, how did his work break out? What did he do? Tanya's telling us it took him 52 days. But what did he do? How did he do the work? You got to know this one.
We had investigated
It took things
Yeah, he had investigated.
During
on
the
the donkey for 3
For
on the
nights.
donkey for 3 days. And
it took
at
3
midnight
days to go around Jerusalem
on a donkey.
and check out the streets and walls before the work began. And then how many other days did it take him to finish it? 49. What is this?
It's fractured.
It's a fractal of this, the 2300-year prophecy. So when they come out of Egypt, at the Passover, which includes these 3 days, that way. How many days till they get to Pentecost?
3.
So, why was I doing that? Who brought that up? What did you bring up about that? Oh, I did. Streets and walls. Streets and walls. Here's your 50 days. The Sunday law. So, in the history of Nehemiah, he's got 3 days to analyze the work and 49 days to build the streets and walls. Where's he analyzing the work?
between the first day of the first month and the 11 months, the 12 months, the 343 days.
You think he ends here? That
I
it's
do.
this 3 days?
I do. Small.
What was that little space?
Well, if that's a good guess. I like that guess. If that was the case, then there's a wall getting built right here.
Yeah.
If that's the case.
Well, we've already done
And what that would mean is that from here to here is 49 days, 50 days. Okay, enough of that. So between here, Kathy wants to know, what do you have between here? You have 1840 to 1844. This is the binding off of who?
Right.
No.
That's the 3 days.
It's the binding off of the Levites.
Oh, the Levites.
Oh.
In our history. Yes.
This is totally separate. I was just wondering if we had ever studied what took place in Esther 9.
With Purim?
It's a little bit before that. There's 2 categories of Jews, actually, and I didn't know if that had anything to do with.
Okay, save that for tomorrow, because we still have to.
Okay.
We have to deal with the distinction of Haman building the gallows and him dying at the Sunday law, and then his 10 sons dying at the Sunday law. We still have to deal with Purim, the death decree, and Sister Tanya wants to put in place the time period. We can do that right now if you know the verses. When does the story of Esther begin in terms of Ahasuerus' reign?
The 3rd year of his reign.
Okay, so this begins, and you guys are making this board really busy.
Esther 1:3.
Okay, read Esther 1:3. Let's put these in place.
In the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him.
Okay, so when does this? When's the other times of his reigns marked?
The marriage, it's on the 7th year.
The 7th year. is here. So, how many years from 9/11 to this marriage?
No.
Either
Either
way.
one.
Well,
I don't have
e-
a
yeah.
birthday.
It's to the marriage of Esther. He got married to her.
So you
Oh, you
got
got the doubling.
You got a
too.
fractal.
You got a
Third
doubling
year he got a
fractal.
divorce, a divorce. On the 7th year he got married to Esther. He
Okay,
did
so
the-
you got 4 years from here to here, or 4 years from here to here.
Mhm.
Okay,
So that must have been the time when he had the war with Greeks. Lost his army.
someone needs to figure that one out. That might have some interesting bearing. And the 12th year,
The 12th year on his reign is when Haman had started
read it to us.
in verse 3. Chapter
3:3.
3. No, I'm not sure. On the 12th year, 7:3:7. In the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month Adar.
So this is also
9/11.
the 12th year.
And then marking at where we mark 1449, forward to the Sunday law would be the 13th year.
Yeah, that's
Right
the-
here?
But 1449 to this, yeah, right there marks the beginning, or around that time, because the first month
Yeah.
would be the first month of the 13th year. So in that area,
12:13.
you can mark it at the midnight cry.
So
if
you're
you
saying
want.
this
It
is
was
this is
midnight
the
cry.
13th year?
It would definitely be, the midnight cry to Sunday law is the 13th year.
Yeah, you're in the 13th year. You're just
Yes.
13 days into it. I was just trying to
Yeah,
get some more. at the
depending on
beginning.
how you decide 11 or 12 months.
Yeah.
So this
It might be safe just to mark it at the midnight cry and say it's the 13th.
You don't deal with, it's after midnight cry.
this takes place in the 13th
Well,
year.
it's actually before by 13 days. But yeah.
Yeah, you got it marked there.
You just told me.
No.
No,
It might be
not.
better to just place it at the midnight cry, so
Well,
I
she-
did.
no, I was answering
No,
her.
it
She
was
saying
written
it's-
on the first month, on the
13th
13th day of that month. That means it was already on the 13th year of King Ahasuerus.
Yeah, I'm saying. No, I'm not talking about the decree. I'm talking
You
about
have
the
anyways.
year itself. Yeah, you're
No, it
right.
was the 13th year of Ahasuerus when they actually wrote the decree and sent it out.
I'm talking about when it began. The year, when the year began. Mark at the midnight cry. You're right.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Really? Did the year begin on the 13th or on the 1st?
On the first.
First,
Okay,
That's
when
the
did the year
month.
begin?
first day.
On the
First
1st.
day of the
What
first.
year was it that was beginning on the 1st?
The 13th year of Ahasuerus.
Okay, and they wrote the decree on the 13th.
Right.
So the year began a little bit before the midnight cry.
That's all I was saying.
Yeah.
13 days before the midnight cry is when the year began.
Oh, I see, you're putting when they wrote.
No, we're not putting, that's just what he's saying, and you
Okay,
guys are
I
struggling with
wasn't
one
able to
another.
follow him, that's why I was saying I couldn't understand what he was
This-
trying to say.
It's best to mark it from the midnight cry because that's the decree.
This is for Michael, 13 days.
Okay, now I understand.
Okay. Not sure what all that means.
Well, the Purim, the word Purim only occurs in Esther, and it's found there 7 times. So within those 10 years, or the last year, you basically are dealing with the Purim from the midnight cry to Sunday law. There's 7 Purims.
So that's the point. Not the 7 Purims. Maybe we can deal with that tomorrow or the next day. But that's the point. This is the end of the 13th year down here when the story's over. Because we're going to take the story further than the Sunday law.
Yeah.
We're going to take it to the death decree time period. All right. But the 13th year ends here somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And where does the story begin?
The 3rd year.
In the 3rd year. So from here to here is how many years?
10 years.
This is the testing process at the end of the world. 10 is testing. All right. Okay, so we still have to deal with Haman, the gallows, his sons, Purim, the death decree, And once we do that, then tie it together with Ruth. And next Wednesday is our last class. Okay.
When I was searching on the internet last night, some theologian basically said that the verse 13 of Esther 3 identifies the day when they stopped casting pur on verse 7. It's just the way it's phrased. It's almost like they left out the 13th day in verse 7. But verse 13 confirms the day that they stopped the casting of pur.
According to,
Some study.
I think it is. I agree with that. I'm going to teach that.
I think it is too, and part of the reason I think it is if you think about it, the 13th day of the 12th month would be super random. He's like, oh, let's just put a decree at the 13th day of the 12th month. But it's marked. It's not a coincidence that it ends in the 12th month, and then the decree actually goes into effect on the 13th day of the 12th month. So otherwise it seems like that.
And that
It's just like out of the hat.
that's my
it's
argument.
random, you know. So
he's already going to kill Mordecai and his people.
yeah.
So what are they casting lots for? To figure the day. So they go all through the year, and when they finally goes into the king, they say the day we want is the 13th of December. Okay, that's when they figured it out.
And Jason said that happens to be the birthday he said it's Moses' day of death. Which is landed on
The Bible says that?
No, but Jewish it's probably true.
Yeah, the Jews have a lot of stuff straight. They
His
crucified their
logic-
Messiah.
But that was also their celebration day. They celebrated
It's like
their
they're lined up in odd
deliverance.
ways.
That's why he wanted to kill him.
The logic of that is that the Jews were identified when they became, actually the Jews was under the leadership of Moses. And so, as you were saying, Haman was not just trying to destroy Mordecai, he wanted to destroy the whole nation that represented Mordecai. And the way to go back to figure out when they began, he began with Moses. And because of that, they were trying to figure out a way to basically wipe out even the memory of them even becoming as a nation together.
But on the day also they celebrated their independence. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for the study. I pray that you help us study this out for ourselves. I pray also that you help us have a good day, safe day, and get done what we need to get done. In Jesus' name, amen.